I'll never forget the day my family moved into that house on Elm Street. It was supposed to be a happy new beginning for us. My wife Joan, my 2 kids Greg and Amy, and myself. We were so excited to get out of our cramped apartment and into a nice big home in the suburbs. The house was a beautiful old 1920s colonial, complete with a big front porch and spacious yard. The neighborhood seemed quiet and friendly. We couldn't believe our luck finding it. Everything was move-in ready after the previous owners fully renovated it before selling. On day 1, we were busy unpacking all our boxes while the kids ran around picking their new bedrooms. That night we all slept soundly, feeling like we were finally home. But the next morning changed it all. I went to grab the mail and shuffled through the usual new resident junk. Then an envelope caught my eye, addressed in neat handwriting simply to the new owners. I opened it up, thinking it was maybe a welcome note from a neighbor. Instead, I read a chilling letter written in perfect cursive. Dear new owners, allow me to welcome you to your new home. Don't get too comfortable. This house does not belong to you. It is mine. I will always be here, watching all who dare to live in it. Your 2 children seem like wonderful additions. I will enjoy observing them as they play in the yard and make this house come alive. Such precious young ones, so sweet, so fragile. Accidents can happen ever so easily if you don't watch them at all times. I do hope you take good care of them. Things buried long ago should remain undisturbed. Curiosity kills the cat, as they say. The walls hear everything. I'll be seeing you soon. Sincerely, The Watcher. I felt my hands shaking, goosebumps rising on my arms. What kind of sick freak would send something so twisted? This was obviously the work of some deeply disturbed mind. I wanted to shield my wife and kids from it, but knew I had to tell Joan. She was just as shaken and scared, insisting we call the police immediately. They came to investigate but found no leads. Whoever this watcher was knew how to cover their tracks. The next few days we hardly slept, jumping at every little noise. I stayed up late watching the windows, barricading doors, anything to keep my family safe. But the letters kept coming. Each was more taunting than the last. My dear new homeowners, don't let the children play unsupervised. The yard may seem safe, but danger is closer than you think. I was pleased to see them digging for worms the other day. Carefree little things. Be careful though. Something buried long ago is best left undisturbed. The depths hold many secrets. Enjoy living in my home. I'll be always watching. Fondly, The Watcher. Oh, welcome. I walk by your house often, peering into the windows at night. Your children look so peaceful sleeping in their new bedrooms. So innocent, so vulnerable. Accidents can happen in the blink of an eye. Please take caution. You don't want the little ones wandering the halls alone late at night. Not all the previous residents have left, if you understand my meaning. The walls whisper to me. I know what they've seen. Do you? Watching. The Watcher. Joan became manic about checking the locks and shutters. She pulled the kids from school, terrified something would happen if they left the house. I hardly recognized the fear-ridden woman my wife had become, and I felt powerless to protect her. The police continued hitting dead ends. There were no fingerprints, no camera footage of the stalker. He was a ghost. Then the notes started getting more personal, more violent. Dear owners, you changed the locks, installed cameras. When will you learn there is no escape? I have the run of these halls day or night. I could pluck a hair from Amy's head as she sleeps, and she'd be none the wiser. Do not let the children play alone outside. The tool shed. Something about the tool shed disturbs me greatly. I am always here watching you, watching them. They're such good little ones. The Watcher. The mention of our daughter's name set Joan into a panic. She begged and pleaded for us to move, insisting we were all in danger. I tried to be the rational one, but truth be told, I was just as scared. How could this madman know so much about us? Unfortunately, selling the house was not an option. The real estate agent informed us no one would purchase a home with a stalker attached. We were stuck, prisoners in our own suburban castle. So we hunkered down, paranoid over what horror would visit us next. I hardly recognized our family anymore, shells of our former selves. We stopped leaving the house, sent meal delivery left at the door, homeschooled the kids. rarely slept as the Watcher crept into our nightmares. One morning I came downstairs to find Amy sobbing uncontrollably. She said someone had been in her room, standing over her bed, just smiling down at her. I searched but found no signs of a break-in. The doors were all locked. The cameras showed nothing. Yet Amy could not be consoled. She knew what she saw. Not long after, I awoke to the smell of something foul, like rotten meat coming from the vents. Inside, I found several dead rats lined up, maggots and all. The stench was putrid. We gagged as I bagged them up. Then came the worst discovery. One night we heard Greg shrieking from his room. We rushed in to find him pointing at his bed in horror. Scrawled across the sheets in dark red liquid were the words, "Die, die, die." I touched the damp stain. Blood. We'd reached the breaking point. Without a word, Joan grabbed the kids and took them to her mother's house 2 states away. I stayed behind to sell off what little we could and hand the keys to the bank. We had to escape with our lives. Before I left that cursed home for good, I checked the mailbox one last time. No surprise, there was a final letter from the Watcher. "Dearest family, don't worry. I will always know where to find you, no matter where you run. Every corner you turn, I will be there. Every night spent cowering behind locked doors, I am near. This is my house. These are my halls. No one leaves unless I allow it. Your children are such splendid additions. I can't wait to properly meet them one day. Their young blood is mine. Until then, I'll be watching and waiting. This is only the beginning. Forever yours, the Watcher." I left the letter on the table and got in my truck. As I glanced back at that imposing colonial one last time, I could have sworn I saw a face staring from the attic window. But in the blink of an eye, it was gone. We eventually rebuilt some semblance of a normal life. New town, new home, new start. Of course, we were still scarred, constantly looking over our shoulders wherever we went. At night, the creaks and moans of the new house would jolt us upright in a cold sweat. Were we truly safe? Or was the Watcher still hovering in the darkness, watching and waiting for us to let our guard down? I'll never know for sure, and not knowing, that is the most terrifying part of all. It was a cold, dreary night when I started my overnight shift at the old warehouse. I had only been working here for a couple weeks, mostly just stocking shelves and doing inventory overnight while the store was closed. I pulled into the mostly empty parking lot around 11 p.m. There were just a couple other beat-up cars that must have belonged to the other night crew. I badged into the employee entrance and headed to the break room to clock in. The huge warehouse was dimly lit and eerily quiet. My footsteps echoed as I made my way past tall rows of shelves, stacked high with boxes and merchandise. I found Kevin, the shift manager, doing some paperwork in the break room. "Hey Mike, glad you're here. It's just us two tonight. Sarah called in sick," he said without looking up. Great, I thought. Less help if anything goes wrong. Not that I was expecting anything strange to happen. Little did I know what was in store. The first few hours of the shift passed by slowly and uneventfully. I unloaded a few pallets of new inventory and shelved what I could. I saw Kevin now and then passing through as he checked certain areas or the security cameras. Otherwise, it was just me, alone with the occasional sounds of the building settling or the HVAC system kicking on. Around 2:30, I started hearing noises coming from the other side of the warehouse opposite the break room. It sounded like boxes falling and crashing to the floor. Must be Kevin messing around over there, I figured. But when I went to investigate, I couldn't find him anywhere. The noises continued, moving up and down the aisles just out of sight. "Hello? Kevin?" I called out but got no response. My heart began to race as I turned down each row, finding only empty aisles and still shelves. Everything looked normal. Yet the clattering noises continued, moving erratically around me. It was unnerving. I pulled out my radio to call Kevin, but got only static in response. Looking up at the ceiling, I spotted a broken overhead light above me that must have been disrupting the signal. I moved quickly toward the break room to find Kevin, or a working radio. The noises persisted and seemed to be following me now. Rounding a corner, I smacked straight into Kevin, almost knocking both of us over. "Jesus, Mike, what the hell?" he exclaimed. "Did you hear those noises?" I asked breathlessly. He gave me a puzzled look. "What are you talking about? I've been in the stockroom doing inventory. It's been totally quiet. I tried to explain the noises, but he insisted he hadn't heard a thing. We both went back to where I had heard them, but nothing seemed disturbed. Kevin checked the security cameras, but they showed nothing unusual. He blamed old building sounds and my overactive imagination, but I knew the sounds were real. I had heard them clearly. Something strange was going on. I was reluctant to go back to shelving alone, but Kevin assured me everything was fine. As I pushed my cart down the next aisle, the noises began again, intensifying in volume and speed. They seemed to originate from all around me, on both sides and even above. The crashing became almost deafening, sounding like stacks of heavy boxes being violently thrown against the metal shelves. I abandoned my cart and ran to find Kevin. I found him in the small security office, but he claimed the cameras still showed absolutely nothing. He was beginning to lose patience with me. "I don't have time for this nonsense, Mike. Now either get back to work or you can clock out and go home," he said sternly. As unsettled as I felt, I still needed this job. I uneasily resumed shelving, trying to ignore the unnerving cacophony that resumed along with me. Then I heard another sound, scampering, skittering footsteps, keeping pace with me down the aisle. Bizarre, disjointed whispers seemed to echo all around me in a strange language I didn't recognize. Panicked, I started to run only to find my path blocked by a towering, menacing figure that appeared in the shadows. I couldn't make out any facial features under the dark hood it wore, just a vague humanoid shape and wispy black tendrils writhing from beneath its cloak. I turned and ran the other way, the maniacal noises seeming to mock my terror. I radioed Kevin desperately once more, but this time didn't even get static in response. I was alone and afraid in the increasingly bizarre warehouse. I had to find a way out of there. My truck was parked close to the building, or I could try the employee exit if I could only get to it. I tore through the aisles disoriented, trying to find my way to an exit, as the noises and whispers followed me relentlessly. Rounding a corner, I was blinded by a bright light shining in my eyes. I shielded my face, fearing the worst, only to hear Kevin's voice behind the flashlight. "Mike, what the hell are you still doing back here?" He sounded more concerned than angry now. I told him frantically about the ominous figure that had blocked my path, the unnerving sounds and whispers surrounding me from all directions. But now, of course, the warehouse was quiet once again, and completely normal looking under the bright lights. I tried to explain that something terrifying and very wrong had happened to me, but Kevin just shook his head. "Look, Mike, I think you just got freaked out being alone back here all night. It's a big, empty building and it was just your mind playing tricks." I steadfastly insisted I wasn't just imagining things, but I was at a loss how to convince him when all evidence of the paranormal events had vanished. Kevin told me to take the rest of the night off, to collect myself. I didn't have to be told twice. I hightailed it out of that warehouse, relieved to finally escape but wondering just what the hell I had really experienced there in the dark. I knew in my gut there was something more sinister at work than just an overactive imagination. After that night, I could never bring myself to go back to that job, regardless of whether or not Kevin believed me. I tried telling a couple other people about what happened, but got mostly skeptical reactions. They thought I was just trying to make an excuse for why I suddenly quit the job with no notice. I know what I experienced was real and frightening. Whatever evil entity inhabited that warehouse only seemed to manifest at night when I was alone. I consider myself lucky to have escaped with my sanity intact, but sometimes I still have nightmares about that night, being trapped alone and terrified within that living nightmare from which there was no escape. Not a situation I ever care to experience again. Ever since my son Logan turned 5, he's been telling me about a scary lady who peeks at him from inside his closet at night. At first, I thought he was just having normal childhood nightmares, but he kept insisting she was real. He'd tell me, "She's in there. I saw her," whenever I put him to bed. And he refused to sleep unless we closed the closet doors. My husband Jason and I chalked it up to an active imagination, but then Logan's claims became more detailed. He described the lady as having long, messy hair covering her face. He said she stared at him with glowing eyes that disappeared when the closet light shined on her. Logan was terrified to go in his room alone. He begged me to stay with him until he fell asleep, but even then he'd wake up crying that the scary lady was there. Nothing seemed to reassure him. Jason and I were getting really concerned. Logan had never suffered night terrors or panic attacks before. His genuine fear seemed like more than just a childhood phase. I decided we needed to get to the bottom of it. I bought a nanny cam that could record all night and set it up facing the closet doors. If this scary lady was just Logan's imagination, the footage would put his mind at ease. But part of me worried what it might capture. The first few nights revealed nothing unusual. With the closet door shut, the camera only filmed an empty corner of the bedroom. Logan still refused to sleep without one of us present. Finally, after the third night, I had an idea. I told Logan the camera had special powers to keep the scary lady away. Maybe it would comfort him to see the empty closet himself. He reluctantly agreed to try sleeping with the doors open once I showed him the benign footage each morning. The first night we tried it, Logan tossed and turned, constantly looking fearfully at the dark, open closet. But he managed to sleep through the night. Eagerly, I scanned the footage the next day. Again, nothing strange, just the vacant closet interior all night long. This gave Logan enough courage to try sleeping alone. The camera seemed to reassure him that the closet remained empty. For the next week, he did pretty well. I was certain he had just imagined the whole thing. But on the 8th night, something bone-chilling appeared on the tape. Around 2 a.m., a disheveled woman crept out of the closet. She looked wildly around the room before turning her gaze toward the sleeping Logan. She was thin and pale, with long, clumped hair hanging over her face. She wore what looked like a hospital gown. As she skulked toward Logan's bed, the camera caught her eyes, which shone bright in the low light. I watched paralyzed with shock as this apparition loomed over my son. She stood there staring intensely as he slept. After a few minutes, she slowly retreated back into the closet. Once the door clicked shut, it was like she vanished into thin air. The footage left me sick with fear. This was no figment of Logan's imagination. Some deranged woman had been hiding in his closet, emerging at night to leer at him while he slept. We installed heavy-duty locks on the closet and an alarm system in the house. I don't know how she gained access to Logan's room or where she disappeared to each day, but the camera captured enough to confirm my son was telling the truth. We moved Logan to sleep in our room while we tried to track down this psychotic intruder. But she never reappeared. It was like she knew we were onto her. I'll never forget the chilling image of that disheveled woman creeping up to my son's bed, nor will I forgive myself for not believing Logan sooner. His closet doors now stay permanently locked, but sometimes I still hear him crying out about the scary lady. She may be gone, but the trauma of what she did lingers on.